Another thing that can be used as well with that kind of that pre-scripted play, or at least a strategy going into a match. And I actually did this once against Federico Collignon when I beat him in open singles. I think it was, I can't remember what worlds or whatever, but I was the only one to beat him that tournament. He won everything, but I was the only one to beat him, and that was kind of my becoming my arrival on the scene kind of thing, where people started to notice that, well, maybe this Canadian guy does have a bit of game if he can beat Rico. I had going into that match, I had a game plan on all the rods pretty much. I knew what I wanted to do here, and I knew how I was going to adjust. I wasn't quite doing the playbook thing yet on the 3-bar. He just kept racing my push side for some reason, and he could never catch up with it, so I don't really know what he was doing there. But that was pretty much, I think, what cost him the match eventually. But anyways, from the 2-bar, my plan of attack was, because I knew he kind of would give this defense, and I think this was spread out a little bit back here, and he'd have his one hand back there. But anyways, I pretty much knew that I'd be able to, just pound the ball up in here, and and probably get a couple goals, and because I'd just be able to sit there and be still and rip it up in there like that, and then be able to pound it, spray kind of long or middle-ish long, and get a couple of those. But I knew that he would adjust. So I even knew, even going into the match, I'm going to start off and pound a couple of those. I think I even got a goal off of it, and then rang it off the 2-bar once to get another goal. I knew that he would adjust, so I knew that he would kind of pop out in here, because he's really just a really fast kind of like twitch player. That he's really smart when he plays, but he will try to chase down balls, especially if he's like this, and he fears that you're going up in here. He'll react up in here. So my plan, I knew that going in, that he would adjust this way, so I knew that I could still set it up and go short behind him, kind of thing. And then I remember that goal actually quite well. It's even still quite a few years ago, but still, it was so he would start off showing the same defense, but as soon as I shot, I knew what I was going to do. I knew that he would adjust, at least I expected him to, that he would jump out there and not leave that hole. He would jump out there like this, so I knew when I shot, I could hit the short. And he actually moved his guys out of the way, because he had his left hand back there, and he moved his guys out of the way, and I scored another goal. I think that won the first game or something like that. So then definitely had a kind of a plan of attack, kind of like I already knew what I wanted to do, so I had a strategy going into the match, which I think is critical to going into some of these bigger matches. You have to have a strategy, a plan, so you've decided ahead of time what it is you're going to start out with, and then you've also decided how you're going to adjust to that if that's not working, or how you're going to adjust to it, expecting the opponent to adjust to you. Because it's very important. Yeah, it might be good to go into a match with a plan, but then all of a sudden if that stops working, you're in the middle of the match, and sometimes when you're in the middle of the match, it's very hard to make good decisions, because there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of people watching, and sometimes you only have 30 seconds between, for timeouts, and you only have so much time between games. It's all very quick, and sometimes it feels quite rushed. So you don't really have a lot of time to think sometimes. So it's good to have, at least for me, it's good to have all this stuff planned out ahead of time, so I know how I'm starting, and I know how I'm going to adjust. So at least if I know how I'm going to adjust, say I know back here, if I'm shooting at a man, so let's say, for example, I was going to shoot at that guy, expecting him to move away. I know if I've adjusted to shooting that way, that at least I know what I'm doing, so that if that stops working as well, then I'll have something else to go to. So I know that, say for example, if I hit a couple of those shorts at Rico and he jumped out of the way, and he left that open, if that stopped working, if he stopped jumping out of the way, then at least I'd have a possible plan of attack of, now going to something else. If he's not jumping, then I can hit push kick, maybe something like that. That trusting that he's going to stay there, and that hole that he's showing now is actually the one that's open. And I think even within that match, I hit a couple push kick, fake pull kicks. I think, if I remember correctly, there was one that was quite nice. I doubt I can hit it now, but it was the ball was kind of bouncing around. It was one of those, and I hit it. 1 in 10, kind of 1 in 20 shot. But anyways. But at least that was the plan ahead of time, so I knew what it was I was doing. I know which options I was going to be working on, so then it was just a matter of deciding when to bring out those options. And that kind of plays into that fourth fundamental of decide, and then just a matter of executing. And the whole dichotomy between a coach and a player, kind of like that coach is, if you put on that coach hat before a match, or even between games, as to what to tell that player to do. And it's the same person, you're talking to yourself pretty much. At least that's how I approach it. That I kind of ran into that idea talking to a sports psychologist, which just so happens I saw him for a couple of sessions the time just before I beat Rico, so everything fell into place that one time. Where I was kind of explaining foosball to him. He didn't know anything about foosball and how it worked and how, there's no coaches and there's just the players have to pretty much tell themselves what to do. And he was like, for instance, saying, well, no, in order for a player to really play and allow themselves to get into the zone, the brain has to kind of be off and just be open and allow itself just to be the player and not have to think about what they're doing. They just react naturally. Everything just comes to them naturally. There's no forced thought, no analytical thinking. And so that you really have to separate the player and the coach. And so for me, I was able to do all the coaching, the decision making ahead of time before the match or before my matches, and then I allowed myself just to be that player during the match. Because before that, I used to get really frustrated in some matches where I'd be playing and I'd see myself being the player. I'd see myself just doing the same stupid thing again and again, or allowing the same stupid goal to be scored again and again. But I wanted to keep myself within the zone or keep myself loose just to be able to be the player. But the coach inside my head was screaming at the player saying, you idiot, stop it, and then I'd get really frustrated with myself, not really realizing why I was getting frustrated, and actually ended up in some matches quite mad and not really understanding why. Yeah, I lost, but it wasn't because I was losing that I was mad. It was just because of the internal, turmoil between the coach and the player. So now I've really realized, or really come to a good way of separating those people. And one way is through the playbook, and another way is just through realizing when the ball's on the table, it's time just to be the player. It's time just to let yourself loose and let it go. When the ball's off the table, now it's time the coach can step in and make the adjustments. There's little time between the ball comes off the table, little time between goals, little time between timeouts, little time between games where the coach can step in and say, okay, now player, start doing this. You're getting blocked doing that. Now start doing this other thing. So that's kind of the whole thing about the coach and the player and kind of like my playbooks.